In Nigeria, the Imo State government launches a campaign to end HIV/AIDS discrimination.
As Southern Africa experiences a record drought, food insecurity rises. While some countries declare emergency, Botswana plans to include drought relief in its national budget.
In Washington, D.C., a fashion show creates a platform displaying unique African designs from across the continent. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, welcome to Africa 54. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television in Lagos, and I'm joined by Esther Gitui-Ewart at the Voice of America in Washington.
Thanks, I'm Esther Gitui-Ewart at our global headquarters in Washington, D.C. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with a look at the HIV and AIDS response in Nigeria. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
That's right. An estimated 1.9 million people in Nigeria are living with HIV, making up a national HIV prevalence of 1.4%, as contained in the National AIDS Indicator Impact Survey. A breakdown of the number of cases nationwide puts 7 states, including Imo State in southeast Nigeria, as accounting for over 60% of the statistics. While efforts are being made to step up response at the national level, the Imo State government has launched a campaign to reach affected persons in the state. Channels Television's correspondent Eyitope Kuteyi compiled this report.
According to the Nigerian National HIV/AIDS Indicator and Impact Survey, 1.9 million people in Nigeria are living with HIV, representing a national HIV prevalence of 1.4% compared to a previous estimate of 2.8%. The updated statistics allows for increased response in terms of investment and provision of HIV spread prevention and treatment services. Imo State has been reported as one of the states contributing over 60% of the HIV burden in the country. It's time to roll up the sleeves. The state government has launched an HIV antiretroviral therapy campaign to reach all affected persons in the state.
We are committed to finding the yet to be identified 38,000 persons living with HIV and to put safe on life-saving antiretroviral therapy, ART, until undetectable viral level equals untransmissible U to U. We hereby also declare zero tolerance to all forms of stigma and discrimination of persons living with HIV. Similarly, the states will support the procurement of all necessary kits with your support, and consumables as provisions have already been made in the 2020 budget.
The governor declares zero tolerance to stigma and discrimination of persons living with HIV, as well as plans to create more awareness on the need for people to know their HIV status.
All ministries, departments, and agencies and institutions, including the universities and polytechnics, to ensure the sensitization of their staff, students, and wards on the need to know their HIV status. Being mindful of the metropolitan nature of our universities, I urge them to serve as gatekeepers in this health service efforts by screening all Year 1 students using the risk stratification checklists and appropriate referral.
The Imo State government is promising to support the procurement of all the necessary kits and consumables needed for HIV/AIDS treatment. Indeed, the government has already made provisions for this in the state's 2020 budget.
And joining us now to talk about ending HIV and AIDS stigmatization in Nigeria is Adaora Onyechere, founder of Save a Child Global Foundation and Senior Special Assistant to the Imo State Governor on Information and Advocacy. She joins us via Skype from Owerri. Welcome to the program. So we know that stigma and discrimination are two major issues associated with HIV/AIDS. This is in addition to other barriers to testing and treatment of people living with the scourge. How does this affect HIV/AIDS response in Nigeria?
I think first of all, when you look at the word stigma, stigma refers to the behavior or characteristics or attitude of marking or stating a person or a group of people as unworthy or discreditable. And discrimination often results from stigma when any form of distinction or exclusion or restriction is displayed against an individual. Now, if you look at some of the categories of issues concerning stigma, you'll find out that one of such issues are cases of sharing and shaming and blaming. You're also looking at status disclosure, social isolation, or even isolation from other patients who go for ART, which is antiretroviral, treatment. And I think that one of the key issues is about orientation and, again, looking at domestication of the policies that have since been adopted by Nigeria.
So we also know that there's a lot of concern when it relates to preventing transmission of the virus, especially through mother and child. Given the HIV prevalence in the country, would you say there's adequate access and up-to-date treatment for affected persons to minimize the spread?
Well, again, you're looking at the status quo of our public health system and the antenatal system within the public health sector. You're also looking at the drive on creating communication lines between pregnant women in the rural areas, most especially, which is where we see a high level of prevalence, and caregivers. Again, we are also trying to also make sure that the level of implementation, especially in access to antiretroviral drugs for pregnant women, are also common knowledge and is also free. Now, some of the issues on the criteria of accessibility for antiretroviral drugs for women who are pregnant and women who also would want to be pregnant, and the status quo of testing for HIV has also been one of the key conversations. And there has been an appeal, for instance, in Imo State, where we are, when we suddenly saw the prevalence of HIV, even though we saw that the national statistics for the aggregate for 1.8% was supposed to be the national prevalence. Imo was high with about 3.8%, and one of the issues of prevalence was amongst, caregivers, and I beg your pardon, pregnant mothers. And the appeal is for all pregnant mothers to visit antenatal and also register and attend antenatal care regularly. And also for health institutions who also have registered pregnant women to look at communicating to them, also making sure that they have them on the list to profile and also educate them on the need to attend antenatal care.
Right, so let's go to your work in Imo State and the campaign to end stigmatization. How are the 16,000 people living with HIV responding to treatment and other key issues on the subject matter?
Now, you remember that talking about the prevalence in Imo State, this all started from a mandate to all the MDAs and institutions, including universities and polytechnics, to ensure sensitization of their members, students, across board. I think it is also very instructive to say that because of that measure, a lot more people are coming forward to also want to get tested and also become part of the program. Remember, the charge certainly is to commit to the advocacy to end stigma and also discrimination against persons living with HIV. And one of the aims for us as a government is to also look at controlling the epidemic by at least September 2020, which is one of the case studies that have been uncovered and also being advocated for by the HIV surge response mechanism.
Right, so thank you. Adaura Onyechere, founder of Save a Child Global Foundation and Senior Special Assistant to the Imo State Governor on Information and Advocacy. Thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.